Welcome into another playoff edition of Daily Face-Off Live. The show, as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app, use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Apologies for a little bit of a late start. Everyone in the YouTube, hope you're doing well. Frank, hope you enjoyed last night's Stanley Cup playoff action. We're going to get into that Canes-Capitals game in a little bit with Luke DeCock from Carolina. But Frank, let's start with last night in Vegas as the Oilers jump out to a 2-0 lead. And all the talk, not really about that OT winner, Frank. It's about the missed call in overtime as Victor Arvidsson took down Brayden McNabb. We'll run the clip here, but what did you make of the
I hope this isn't bad. You hate to
Vegas.
see these kinds of injuries. McNabb went down right away. It looked like he jammed his arm or wrist.
There you go.
There you
Frank.
Look, I think this is really unfortunate. I don't think there's any intent here. I think part of it is there's really not a lot of force applied here. It looks like one of those situations where he actually tried to grab him and kind of wrap him, but when he went to get him, his stick got in the way, and it just I'm not making any excuses here. Ugly result for Vegas. Definitely a significant moment in the series, and it looks like a really significant thing for Brayden McNabb.
Yeah, it did not look good seeing Brayden McNabb go down like that. And listen, it's absolutely a penalty. And I understand all the frustration from Golden Knights fans as well, because you had killed off the 5-minute major earlier in that overtime. It felt like when that game was at 5-on-5 from basically halfway through the second period all the way through overtime, 5-on-5 was just controlled by the Golden Knights. And again, for this to have a relatively big impact, because Leon Draisaitl fires home the game winner less than a minute later, less than 30 seconds later, it's frustrating for sure. I also look at that and go, Vegas in another game where they gave up 5 goals, they scored 4. Like, you'd think that would be enough to win on most nights, but it wasn't, as the Oilers' big guns finally woke up in overtime, Frank.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, previewing game 2, saying kind of the scary part about the Oilers is that a lot of their scoring from the last few games has been from their depth. What happens when you get a moment when their stars begin to pour them in? And I mean, this shift here, I mean, Jack Eichel, yeah, one of the great players in the world, like a guy who got Selke votes, like top end defensemen aren't making that play when skating backwards, let alone a forward. So tough spot. And now the Golden Knights quite literally are in a tough spot moving forward.
Yeah, down 2-0, losing both on home ice, and they got to go to Edmonton on Saturday night with, I mean, that Saturday night game 3, that's your season on the line, right? Like, you're already in a spot where you have to win 4 of the next 5. You're not winning 4 straight against this Oilers team.
I'd say that would be a long shot, and I would say that there will be approximately 4 sober people in the entirety of Edmonton on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be absolutely rocking. Again, Canes, Caps, that series is 1-1. That'll be our big segment today. But let's turn our attention to the schedule tonight in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Frank, where the Toronto Maple Leafs will roll into Florida. It's the defending champs who, they're not on their heels by any means. You're never in trouble, as the old saying goes, till you lose at home, Frank. And I look at this. Is it too simple when you look at how Florida can get back into this series to just be like, hey, they need some saves? Like, they've scored 4 goals in back-to-back games. That should be, in most scenarios with Bobrovsky, that should be enough for you to at least get the split.
Yeah, I mean, it should. And there's been a lot of uncharacteristic parts of this Florida Panthers start. Bobrovsky being well below average is one, but also the way the game 2 played out, having leads, blowing them. And it's not just blowing them, but having Toronto score as quickly as they did to respond to those goals. That isn't what we've been accustomed to from the Florida Panthers. What I'm most interested as this series shifts to Florida is, can the Toronto Maple Leafs show for once and for all a killer instinct that Brendan Shanahan started talking about 3 years ago? Put a skate to the throat of the Cats. You've got an opportunity here. Get greedy. Get at least square off one of these games in Florida and come back with a 3-1 series lead. Because I think already Florida's on their heels, whether they want to admit it or not. And this is a position that Florida hasn't been in for a while. They've won 7 consecutive playoff series. They've won 10 of their last 11 playoff series. It's a pretty significant moment to have Florida down 2-0 heading home, because their margin for error has evaporated.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw someone on Twitter saying, is this just a result of the Panthers? You said it, 11 playoff series over the last couple of years, Frank. Like, they've played more playoff hockey than anyone. I don't look at those two games at all as a team that's exhausted or has played too much hockey. That was just poor performances at a bad time. So for the Leafs, I think you need to prove a little bit here that you learned your lesson from round one as well. And maybe they got a little bit too high on themselves. Like, take this a game at a time and again, show that maturity that we were praising them for through 3 games against Ottawa.
Yeah, I don't think Florida looked like they were tired at all when they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5.
Yeah, exactly. I think kind of go into that as a little bit of a lazy narrative, if you will. You got to give this Leafs team credit, and this Florida team absolutely has room to play a whole heck of a lot better than they did. But again, to kind of put a bow on it, bold prediction: you're not winning if Bobrovsky gives up 5 again. Like, you're gonna need some big and timely saves from your goaltender. The other series tonight, it's honestly Connor Hellebuck was fine in game 1. It's not a similar conversation at all to what we were just doing with Florida. He stopped everybody on that Dallas Stars team except Mikko Rantanen, a 3-2 win where Rantanen had the hat trick. We talked about it all earlier in the week. Tonight, though, I go to what Scott Arniel said, where he to paraphrase, he was like, hey, we played like it was game 45 of the regular season. For the Jets to come out as flat as they did on home ice in front of that whiteout was disappointing. But one thing I'll point to, they're a team who throughout the regular season, throughout the playoffs, they really don't lay back-to-back stinkers, especially on home ice.
You're right, and I would expect a much more engaged Winnipeg team. And I think Scott Arniel was onto something, though, when he mentioned that, because that was the big thing that stood out to me when watching their games in St. Louis last series. They looked like a team that not only wasn't ready to play, but actually for periods of it looked like they were disinterested. I'm a big believer in posture, body language, wanting to be the aggressor. They didn't have that. And I was a little bit surprised that Dallas, also coming off of an emotional game 7 and a big comeback in their own right, they brought that across the border with them. So here's another opportunity on either side to learn a lesson. Because think back to last round, the Colorado Avalanche won game 1 and then had 2 separate leads in game 2 in Dallas with the chance to take a 2-0 series lead by winning both games on the road. The Stars knew what kind of trouble they were in at that moment in time when they found their urgency, and Colin Blackwell got the game winner in game 2 in OT. They know what Winnipeg is facing. They need to make sure that they don't make the same mistake as Colorado and let Winnipeg back in the gate.
Yeah, and again, like last night, Edmonton, Vegas, that's 2-0. The Carolina Washington result changed my mind a little bit about that series. And again, bring it to tonight. Like, I'm not sure if there's something that can happen in Florida, Toronto, that'll like grossly change my view of how that series is going. Winnipeg, Dallas is the one for me where game 2 feels a little bit more like a swing game than the other game 2s. We're like, okay, if Winnipeg comes out and is urgent and Connor Hellebuck looks good, it's like I view that series a lot different. Whereas if Dallas comes and is way more, like you said, intense and is all over them for long stretches again, then it's like, okay, again, down 2-0 at home ice. It's easy to point to that and say you're hoop, but the way this game plays out, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, Frank. That'll really change my view of this series, maybe more than other game 2s.
Yeah, we'll see what Mikko Rantanen has to say about that, because he set an NHL record with 12 consecutive Dallas Stars goals that he's factored into in the playoffs, which is mind-blowing to think about. The record previously was 9, and I believe it was held by Mario Lemieux. So 12 and counting. Let's see how far he can push this.
Yeah, and of course, another big thing, Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello were wearing their usual practice jerseys, indicating that they're on a pairing. So if the Jets can get Morrissey back for this hockey game, that will be another massive boost, because, again, you just kind of look at the minutes. Like, they had Hayden Fleury playing almost 20 minutes last night. Getting Morrissey, and not to slag on Fleury, but, like, getting Morrissey back and having him playing his usual 22, 23, 24, 25 minutes, whatever it is, that'd be massive.
Yeah, and let's see how the scales continue to tip, because at some point Heiskanen's going to be back too.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. We're going to continue the playoff talk in a second, but Frank, I wanted to play a little over-under with you here on a Friday. A very fun game, because it, one, gives you an opportunity to give us great answers, but you also get to judge my ability to set a line. So let's start with one. Total games in the second round. Now that we got, a somewhat decent sample size from a few of these series, I will say that between the 4 series, we see a total of 24 and a half games played. My logic was one series goes 7, 2 of them go 6, one of them ends in 5. That is how I got to 24 and a half. Are you going over or under?
I'm going under. I think we could see 2 5-game series here.
Really?
Yep. I think if Dallas wins tonight and it's 2-0, I think there's a chance for 3.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something. And the other thing that would be kind of weird in it all is if you had 3 short series and one of them went long, you're also going to have a bunch of teams who are sitting on the sidelines for as long as a week too. So with some of these teams that are banged up, that's probably a good thing, I suppose. But it would be weird to just kind of have everything focused down to one series. And again, we're going to talk Canes Caps in a little bit here. The other one I had, Frank, going out to the coaching side of things, we know a couple of vacancies have obviously been filled. Talked about Quenneville yesterday. The Rangers found their guy in Mike Sullivan. These are the remaining 6, though. Penguins, Hawks, Canucks, Bruins, Kraken, and Philadelphia Flyers. Between these 6, I'm going to set the line at 1.5 first-time head coaches getting these jobs. What do you say to that line?
1.5 first-time coaches. Okay, this is an important question. Do you consider Anders Sorensen as the interim in Chicago? Would he be a first-time coach?
No, I'm going to say it has to be like, I think it has to be like a hire. Like you got to bring in an outsider, whatever, internal hire who's never been a head coach before.
I'll take the under.
Take the under. I mean, Malhotra in Vancouver. I know you talked about him on the DFO rundown the other day.
Yeah, so where's the other first-timer coming?
I feel like Seattle might have to go that way.
So you're betting that one of either Chicago or Seattle does a first-timer.
Yeah, and Vancouver sticks with that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I'll just take the under, though. I hate betting the under because I think it's a crappy way to live. But by the way, I was right yesterday. Caps Canes hit that under at 5.5.
I'm honestly, it's one of those series, Frank, and we're going to dig into it in a second. It's one of those series where I'm fascinated to see what they start setting the line at. I mean, I think I just did a pretty good job setting a couple lines, but like 3 goals in the overtime game in game 1, 4 in game 2. And it's like, man, that might be like the rare 4.5 over under, courtesy of our friends at Bet365. On that note, let's dig into that series.
You are such a skinny prick. Your arm is long enough to pat yourself on the back. So there you go.
Yeah, I can reach. All right, let's get to our big segment for the day. It's the All 32, and it's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, where you can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program. It all comes with their unbeatable pricing policy, including the Charm Diamond Flexity card. You can apply for one today and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Pleasure to be joined by Luke DeCock, sports columnist from the News and Observer. And there are 2 massive sports stories in North Carolina. It's Canes and Capitals. It's Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. Luckily for us, Luke, we're talking Canes Caps today. And I want to start by asking you a bit about this Carolina offense. It's kind of dried up. I mean, they needed overtime to get a second goal in game 1. They only score once in game 2. How much of a concern is that for you as this series goes on, or do you think you snap out of it?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, when you look at sort of holistically the way they've played, it's the way they play. It's a lot of shots. It's a lot of shot. Rod Brind'Amour bristled today. The shot volume has been coming for a while. It's possession. It's putting pucks at the net. It's trying to get rebounds and trying to get the defense moving. It's getting in the forecheck. They're doing, for the most part, all those things. I think there was a little bit of a lapse in game 1. Maybe didn't get there right away in game 2. Overall, I think they've generally played the game that they want to play, the game they have to play. When you look at why they haven't won, the first goal in game 2 is a fluky bounce off Shane Gostisbehere's throat. Game 1, Protas's goals, it's just a great goal. I mean, Freddie Anderson's played really well. Protas found that little bit of space on the far side, at ice level, past the pad. And then, they got the goals they needed late in game 1. They didn't in game 2, although they did score a fluky power play goal. I mean, I think overall, especially coming home with a win in hand, they're going to feel pretty good about their 5-on-5 play despite not finishing. And this is kind of the way it is sometimes with this team. It's the difference between, sort of a team with elite finishing talent and one that has above average finishing talent. And this is the way they play. To me, the bigger issue is the fact that the power play, which was absolutely deadly against New Jersey, hasn't converted. And to me, and this is, as an observer, their entries have still been good. The entries are great against New Jersey. They've looked really static on the power play. So if I'm Rod Brind'Amour, and he would never say this, I'm way more concerned about the performance on the power play and just the way it looks, especially the power play they had in the first period of game 2. That was a real chance to set the tone in a period where they weren't playing as their game as well. I would be more concerned about that than the 5-on-5 play, to be honest.
Luke, I want to ask a big picture question. You've had a front row seat to this team for 2 decades and definitely the last 7 playoff rounds or runs that they've been on. One thing that I'm struggling to really size up is how good is this Canes team? Like you mentioned the structure and the style and all those things have been the constant, but compared to last year, compared to years prior, does this team, do they have the ability to do what it takes? Is that a silly question? Is like, I want to know, like, where are they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a team where when you look at the regular season numbers and the numbers even in the playoffs, it's it's an analytics darling. It's one of the teams that, if you're looking straight at possession numbers and expected goals, things like that, this is a team that has a whatever your chosen analytics purveyor is, a 1-6 to 1-5 to 1-4 team of winning the Stanley Cup right now, and goes into every season as one of the favorites in that category. But still, 6 years in, now 6 1/4, hasn't won a conference finals game, 0-for-8 in the conference finals. And obviously the first year in 2019, they were kind of happy to be there. The Bruins were an absolute wagon. But the Panthers series in 2023 was a huge missed opportunity. Hurricanes had home ice. They lost 4 1-goal games, 2 in overtime, 1 in many overtimes. Can this team score goals? So 2 questions to your point. 1, can this team score goals when it needs to in the playoffs against playoff level defense at 5-on-5 and at the power play? And the power play's been at the top of the list on every postmortem for the last 6 years. And number 2 is the goaltending good enough to hold up over 16 wins? Can the goaltending win 16 games? And to me, that's been more a durability question at times. Obviously, the first couple of years, it was Peter Mrazek. Alex Nedeljkovic wasn't very good in 2021. And then now you're in the Frederik Andersen era, and he was, either hurt or banged up or wore down in 22 and 23 and 20, or 23 and 24, 22, 23 and 24. Now you've got a healthy, confident, surgically repaired Frederik Andersen. So I think that the dynamic has changed on that front. The Hurricanes are a different team when they're getting the kind of goaltending they've gotten from Frederik Andersen in these playoffs. Now, can they score enough goals to make that count? They did not in game 2. They did in game 1. They certainly did against the Devils. Obviously, the trade for Mikko Rantanen was an attempt to address that, and it just didn't work, right? He didn't want to be here. It didn't fit the way they played. He just doesn't play at this pace, which is not a criticism. It's just an acknowledgement of the way that his style, and it fits better in Dallas. They made the best of it they could. Logan Stankoven obviously does fit the way they play, but he's not Mikko Rantanen. And we've seen that the way Rantanen has played in these playoffs. So there certainly was a recognition or acknowledgement of the point that you make in terms of goal scoring. That was an attempt to address. It didn't work out. They made the best of it. They moved on. So they need Andrei Svechnikov to play the way he did against the Devils. He has not always played that way in the playoffs. They need Sebastian Aho to be a number 1 center. They need the 3rd and 4th lines to chip in with goals, and they can. I mean, one of the reasons I think the Hurricanes weren't as good in game 2 as they were in game 1 is Mark Jankowski came out of the lineup injured. That guy was a bull against the Devils when he got into that series and in game 1, and that made their 4th line so much more effective. It's tougher with Jack Roslovic on the road because you can't pick his spots. Jankowski you can throw out in any scenario. He's going to be fine. So I think you'll notice that less at home in game 3 where they can kind of pick spots for Roslovic. But I think that hurt them in game 2. So to your question, it's all a holistic thing. Can you, I mean, it sounds stupid. Can you score enough goals? Can you stop scoring enough goals? But there are very specific reasons for the Hurricanes why those questions exist. I think one of them has so far been answered. I mean, I think if Frederik Andersen plays like this, the Hurricanes are a good enough team to play for the Stanley Cup. But they got to score goals, and they got to get the power play back to where it was in the Devils series.
Obviously, these two teams see quite a bit of each other, and there's a little bit of a rivalry and that familiarity. But has there been anything from this Capitals team through 2 games that has at least caused you to raise an eyebrow and be like, oh, that could actually be a pretty big problem for this Canes team as the series rolls on, whether it's stylistically, a player, or something like that?
No, I mean, I think, certainly from the Hurricanes' perspective, you would not necessarily want to see Tom Wilson playing this well. I mean, he's been a dramatic two-way player. I mean, the amount of time he spent on his stomach last night diving for pucks is emblematic of effort and hustle and grit and all those things. And not just, hitting people. Like Tom Wilson was a force in non-physical ways in game 2. So that, Hurricanes certainly don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. It makes the Capitals a much better team. They've held Alex Ovechkin to 4 shots. I mean, that's pretty good. And no goals, obviously. So, no, I think, the issue that you get into with the Hurricanes and Capitals is, the Capitals are a bigger, more physical team. But and certainly that's true when you compare the Capitals forwards to the Hurricanes defense. But I think when you look at the Hurricanes forwards, the Stahl line with William Carrier, that's a big line. Roslovic's playing between Eric Robinson and I'm drawing a blank now. Another big guy. An idiot.
We got it right in front of you here.
Oh yeah, William Carrier.
Oh, you said. Well, yeah, Carrier is there, but Martinook and Stahl, Robinson, Carrier. These are big forwards who can go and hit people, and Andrei Svechnikov obviously can be every bit the physical force. Maybe not the size and the power of Tom Wilson, but certainly the willingness, and we saw that. We've seen that several times in the playoffs, most famously Hampus Lindholm, where he absolutely clobbered Lindholm coming from around the net. Seth Jarvis can deliver a big hit. He's not a big guy, but he really did a Svechnikov Lindholm on Brett Pesce in the first round against the Devils. That was pretty impressive. So, I think this is a bigger team up front than it's been the last 6 years. And it's a franchise that, look, they're going to draft skill. They're going to pursue skill. They're going to trade for skill. They're going to draft hockey sense. They're going to pursue hockey sense. But they've got some guys who are 6'2", 6'4". When Jankowski's in there, that's another 6'4" guy. They've got some guys who are bigger, can get in on the forecheck, and I think that maybe neutralizes the physical dimension a little bit. The other thing I'll say is, and we definitely saw this in the Devil series, when you go back the Hurricanes against Florida, against the Rangers, those two teams in particular, they would get goaded into anything. They were suckers for it. And their discipline this year against the Devils, Timo Meier was a real pain for them, and he was instigating and needling. And Eric Hall is always, the Hurricanes fans' least favorite player until Timo Meier briefly overtook him. The Devils tried to entice the Hurricanes into after the whistle stuff and things like that. And the Hurricanes just didn't bite. I think 7 years in, and some very difficult lessons learned, this core has learned not to retaliate and not to go in and do things that are going to turn a power play into a 4-on-4 or turn a 4-on-4 into a power play. I think there's some discipline with this team learned in the hardest of fashions against Florida and against the Rangers that you saw against the Devils. And certainly in the first 2 games against the Capitals. I mean, I think there's been 1 or 2 times where either team was kind of on the edge of maybe getting an extra penalty. And in every one of those instances, for me, it was the Capitals. Jumping in or whatever. Officiating, I think, has been fine in both games. And it hasn't been the Hurricanes sort of at risk of getting that evening up penalty. I think that's a sign of growth. Whether it'll matter or not, I don't know. But it's really important in a series against Washington where you have Wilson and you have Duhaime. And, even Ovechkin, you go back 7 years to, Svechnikov needling him and Ovechkin saying, fine, kid, let's go, and knocking him out. So, the bad blood between these teams is certainly there, but I think we've seen it pretty repressed in the first 2 games, maybe just because they've both been so competitive.
Luke DeCock, you can read his work at the News and Observer. Appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.
Moving along to our daily face-off inbox question, Frank, I wanted to ask you about Joel Quenneville's opening press conference yesterday. Obviously happened after our show. Before I get your take on it, let's listen in. Here's how Coach Q opened up his press conference.
Before I talk about how excited I am to be here, I'd like to say a few words about what happened in 2010. As Pat said, what happened to Kyle Beach was horrific and inexcusable. I was sick to my stomach when I learned what had taken place. Had I known what had happened, I would have taken swift action. I own my mistakes. While I believe wholeheartedly the issue was handled by management, I take full responsibility for not following up and asking more questions. That's entirely on me. Over nearly 4 years, I've taken time to reflect, to listen to experts and advocates, and to educate myself on the realities of abuse, trauma, and how to be a better leader. I hope others can learn from my inaction.
Frank, what did you make of Coach Quenneville and also just kind of the entire Ducks brass?
I think the most important line was the last one. I hope others have learned from my inaction. Look, I think we can all sit here and say, you were wrong, should have done something different. I would have done something different. I think it's really hard to cast those aspersions. We weren't there. We don't know what was actually said, and we don't know the truth. But I don't believe in this world that you can lock someone up and throw away the key. We're not perfect. I believe he deserved a second chance. And I think a lot of his message was really strong and powerful. I thought they hit a lot of the right notes, and with their due diligence and talking to Kyle Beach, both Pat Verbeek and then Joel Quenneville, I believe Joel Quenneville spoke again to Kyle Beach on Thursday before the press conference. Look, no one can go back in time and undo this, but he also said best that his actions are going to speak a lot louder than anything he says. And so I think this was an important step forward.
Let's move along to our daily bets for the day, brought to you by Bet365, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. At Bet365, they got you from game props, player props, totals, and money line. You can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, and of course, the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever you bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, must be 19 or older. A couple of plays here. Frank, a same gamer tonight, Dallas, Winnipeg. I think we're going to get the over. It was so close in game one, but I think that Jets offense gets rolling a little bit. Kyle Connor 1 point, Mikko Rantanen 1 point, because that's all he does is produce points, over 5.5, and then a little goal scorer parlay. I'm taking the chalk, though, in the Toronto-Florida game. I think Austin Matthews is maybe due to find the back of the net for the first time in this series. And then there's Leon Draisaitl on Saturday against the Golden Knights. 2 goals in 2 games for Leon. Oilers power play 5 for 6 on home ice so far in these playoffs. They head back home. They score on the power play. Draisaitl's involved. Pretty easy to see that one. Plus 477. You got a good feeling on any of these series as we head into the weekend, Frank?
No, but I do have a bold proclamation. If Austin Matthews doesn't score in either of the 2 games in Florida, the Toronto Maple Leafs are coming back tied 2-2.
Ooh, I like that. Nylander had his goals, obviously. Marner scored a big one. They could use one from their captain as well, especially with the power play. A timely power play goal can go a long way. Quickly to wrap up the show, Frank, with a little garbage time. It is always cool when you're watching a national broadcast and you kind of squint and you're like, oh, those are the DFO lines. PK Subban using the DFO lines last night on ESPN, as pointed out by you.
Yeah, confirmed. PK Subban, big daily faceoff line combo guy. Shout out to Brock Sagan, the muscle behind every lineup that you see on dailyfaceoff.com. A staple, a tradition. It's unlike any other. It's where, honestly, I was talking, like, I can't even tell you, like, how many, since I put my news out earlier this week that I'm moving on in a few weeks, that I can't tell you how many GMs or people in the game were like, dude, do you know how often we use these lines and stuff that we do in our front office, whether it's scouting or whether it's video coaches or whoever it might be? It's used a lot more behind the scenes than many would realize.
Yeah, I remember, I forget what team it was, but they were posting them. That was like what they put in their locker room. Like, the other team's lines were up every single day. So pretty cool. All right. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Also great on the tradition unlike any other. Our guest, Luke DeCock. I don't know if you saw, he was wearing the Augusta National sweater as well. So that's good, Frank. That's really good. Have a good weekend. Everybody in the YouTube, appreciate your time. As always, we'll be back Monday to keep talking Stanley Cup playoffs, noon Eastern. We'll see you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.